How to handle a friend's difficult kid. I debated throwing this into the unknown abyss that is the internet, but here goes. We have a couple who are our best friends and we basically have been inseparable since becoming friends a few years ago. We just mesh well. We have two girls, 9 and 13, and they have one boy, 14. We'll call him Kevin. We spend most weekends together and all vacations together. Part of me is not sure if this is just teen boy behavior, normal kid behavior that I have somehow not been exposed to before, or if he is just a turd. He's not like that all the time, but at this point it's most of the time. It's such a strange cry for attention though. When he is with only me and my girls, he minds everything I say on the first time and just acts like a normal kid. It's so refreshing. Once we are all together, he starts acting out. For the first few year or so the kids were great and got along all the time, although there was definitely a sense of some bad only child behavior as he adjusted to not being the center of attention all the time. Then Kevin started some acting out in ways that is totally unheard of in my and my husband's world. Initially Kevin would do things like purposely hurt his mom but covertly, like sitting next to her but digging his elbow in with increasing intensity until she hollers. He wouldn't dare do it to his dad but does do it in front of him, walking up while we are playing cards or a game and flipping over just her game pieces and then repeating when she picks up the pieces. She usually ignores the first 1, 2, 3 episodes, then he gets yelled at on the final straw. He also will dictate the entire evening with his behavior. If he decides he is done with an activity or outing, he will basically ask in the whiniest voice on the planet, when are we gonna go, and then make it absolutely miserable for everyone until he gets his way. He will either zero in on an obnoxious whiny noise and make it continuously, or stand over the adults sitting at the table and start pouting in the most dramatic fashion. They ignore it but is so awkward for my husband and I, who would never let our girls do that. He also logs away different rules that we have for our home and makes it a point to break them when we are somewhere else, where I am less inclined to say something, and basically stare at either my husband or I while doing it, kind of like, what are you gonna do about it? The thing that really bothers me is that if you were to number on a scale of 1 to 10 his behavior, my husband and I pick up these little nuances at like a 2, and this is where we would discipline our children, and my BFF doesn't register it until it's a 2-8, at which point she yells at him, with her husband jumping mostly when she, or me, has had enough. She acknowledges that Kevin is annoying, but she herself was a very difficult child, so she excuses a lot of it, and I feel like she truly doesn't notice / tunes out a huge chunk of it. I guess I don't know what to do. It's getting to a point where it is starting to sour our excitement for trips, and I don't know that they even realize it's an issue. They don't seem bothered by us getting after him, but I don't want to be in the habit of it. Full confession, I have even spanked him a few years back when he hit her. She thanked me for doing it because he was being so out of control, but I felt like the biggest weirdo on the planet because who spanks someone else's kid? But something inside me broke when I saw him do it and knew she wouldn't do anything. Their version of normal child behavior is very different from ours. For years we have went on trips all the time and got rental houses together, but honestly I don't want to be around him for upcoming trips. I don't know if I try to talk to her about it, and how, get stricter with rules of how he behaves in my home, or start suggesting trips where we get our own space, rental cars, etc. That is sad to me because we have such a great dynamic otherwise, and would certainly need an explanation because it would be outside the norm. Any thoughts? Too long didn't read. Can other people's kids be a deal breaker to an otherwise great relationship? I got a lot of really great suggestions. I appreciated all the responses. I am not ready to throw the towel in on this friendship yet, but am going to try these things. Be more firm with acceptable behavior in my house. Every time I hear him say something I wouldn't let my own kids say or do, I will make a point to call him out on it. He has really poor manners and likes to add in being sarcastic, but he's not good at it, so he just sounds like an asshole most of the time. Plan more adults only things. Honestly, COVID has really added to all of this additional interaction with him because we used to have lots of adults only nights out, weekends, etc. etc. But with all the lockdowns it's like there is guilt for leaving kids home to do something fun without them, you know? We do have another vacation scheduled, non-refundable and paid for ages ago, and will bring up having improved boundaries when the time is right. At his rate of becoming the center of attention, in a bad way, I am certain I will have an opportunity to slide the conversation in. If that trip goes poorly, I will make a point of suggesting our own accommodations for future trips versus a shared home. We can still travel together without 100% togetherness. Honestly, the best thing is probably to have a conversation with your friends and spill it all out and see how things shake out. The alternative is basically to stop hanging out with them. So emo, it's worth a shot. We'd like to hang out with you guys, but honestly Kevin's behavior is irritating and upsetting and makes us not want to be around him. Also, he's 14 now. So emo, you can start treating him more like an adult, as in, what would you say to an adult friend that was behaving like this? Hey man, it's really fucking weird that you keep messing with your moms. What's up with that? Or whatever. Obviously use your own voice/wording. Honestly, it seems like he's relying on the fact that everybody ignores his behavior. So I would stop ignoring it, but you don't have to discipline him or yell at him. Point out how awkward he's making things. You might feel like you're the one making it awkward, but you're not. You're just drawing attention to his behavior instead of letting it slide. It sounds to me like the issue here is not the kid but your friend's inability to be the parents. To answer your question, hell yes, people's kids can be the deal breaker to a great relationship. Think about what you have posted. Kevin will throw a tantrum and will just end the evening doing that. How would you react if an adult did that? I would tell them to eat shit and leave. I would not plan social events with that person. When it comes to disciplining someone else's kid, do not do that, particularly any sort of spanking. 14 years old is way too old to be spanking a kid. You do not want to be hitting a minor. My wife and I have jettisoned more than a few friends because their kids are just so misbehaved. Wait, he's 14. The behavior you describe sounds more like a 5-year-old. Is it possible that he has some sort of disability that his parents are in denial about? It sounds like he has an alarmingly unhealthy relationship with his mom, in particular. I think you have a few options. 1. Have a talk with the parents and tell them that you're concerned their son is still acting up so much at his age, and openly discuss how you should all handle this going forward. For example, they take him to a specialist, you all get on the same page about how to handle discipline when you're all together, etc. 2. Start calling out his bad behavior more quickly so that hopefully he stops doing it around you. I would think that for a 14-year-old, embarrassing him might work. For example, when he does something like knock cards over or whine to go home, you could say our girls used to do that when they were little kids. Thankfully they've grown out of it. Or you could try talking to him like an adult. Why did you do that? That's not appropriate. 3. Be too busy to go on vacation together the next couple years and tone down the hangouts a bit to where you can tolerate it. In a couple years, Kevin should be old enough that he's somewhere separate with his friends or on his phone the whole time, so he may become less of a problem. At that point, you can resume the friendship like before. Number 1 and 2 will likely embarrass the parents and you risk blowing up your friendship, but you'd also potentially fix the situation right now. Number 3 probably has the best chance at continuing a lifelong friendship, I'd say. You can try to talk to her about it. Tell her the specific behavior that he has that you will not tolerate anymore so she can try to work on them with him. Your friends are shitty parents. It's up to you whether you want to have that conversation or not, but they've really screwed this kid up in a way that is unlikely to be fixable at his age. There's basically no way I'd put up with this kind of thing. There's nobody who could possibly be that close of a friend to be worth dealing with a kid like that on vacation. Husband, 28M, treats our marriage like another thing on his business schedule and I'm, 28F, sick of it. Shortly after my husband and I got married, 3 years ago, he's started to treat our marriage like another thing on his checklist and treats me more like a client than a wife. For example, he schedules the days in the week where we can have dinner together and doesn't even mention it to me if he isn't going to be home on the other days. I have to check his calendar to know if he'll be home or not. When I complain about it, He just shuffles his schedule to add more days he can be home until I've calmed down, and then things return back to normal. He also has a set time, and if dinner runs over, he just excuses himself and moves on to whatever is next on his list. He does the same things with dates, vacations, etc. If my family invites us over at the last minute and it isn't on his schedule, he won't go. If I ask him if we can do something or go somewhere, he asks me to email his assistant so she can confirm he can make it. If he has something planned and I can't go, he also gets really upset and acts like I've wasted his whole day, even though he very rarely gives me prior warning and usually leaves it up to his assistant, who isn't very consistent at notifying me. I've tried talking to him about how this makes me feel, but he never changes. I've talked to his cousin and she claims that's how the men in the family are and I shouldn't take it personally, but it feels awful. He wasn't like this whilst we were dating, and I don't know how to get our relationship back to where it was pre-marriage. What do I do? Too long didn't read. Husband only spends time with me if it's in his schedule and wants me to inform his assistant about any dates I want to go on to see if he can make time. Since he's treating you like an employee, are you at least getting paid? What are you getting from this relationship that you can't get from anyone else? Have the assistant schedule marriage counseling. Wondering if physical outbursts are considered normal or red flags. I have been in a couple abusive relationships, so I know I'm very sensitive to this sort of thing. I'm currently back in therapy working on my triggers, but I'm having a hard time figuring out a situation that made me take a step back from a relationship I was in. He got upset one night after I told him that I felt like he wasn't respecting that I didn't want to be touched sexually. He started screaming, "Are you fucking kidding me?" over and over, and then punched a wall. I left immediately. When we talked the next day, he said sorry, but explained that people expressing frustration or upset is not wrong. Told him I didn't feel safe around him now, even though his punch wasn't directed at me. We weren't able to come to a mutual understanding. Despite feeling like I did what was best for me, I can't help but wonder if this really is something normal and I'm the outlier because of my past trauma. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Too long didn't read. I, 31F, walked away from a short but serious 9-month relationship after he, 35M, had a physical outburst and punched a wall. Wondering if, in general, this is seen as a red flag or acceptable behavior. Red flag. Any physical violence, especially as extreme as punching a wall, is a warning sign. Just being around such verbal and physical violence is traumatic for most. If a 35-year-old does not have the emotional maturity or control by now, then he never will unless he dedicates himself in changing. Run away from such a person now before his frustration or anger gets triggered again, and next time it won't be a wall he will be punching. Good call. Red flag for sure. If he's doing damage to environment from rage, it's a way of making it feel like he can do that to you as well. Also sounds like he's not taking no for an answer leading up to it. That's another red flag too. Unless I'm misunderstanding. I had tried nice ways of letting him know I wasn't feeling interested first. That didn't work, so I gave up and went into a sort of disassociated state, not moving at all. He finally told me that he wished I would make any kind of effort. That's when I said calmly, "I don't know how many times I have to tell you no." That's when he got angry. Backstory: we had discussed my sexual and physical abuse many times before this and how it can affect my reactions, even to kind affection. While trying to work through how we can have positive intimate experiences, I told him it was helpful for me if he asked before touching me. That small gesture makes me feel safe and cared for. It makes me feel like I'm not pressured or in fear that there will be consequences if I say no. He said if he had to ask for consent every time he touched me, that it meant we were no longer in a real relationship. He said it would make us only close friends. So getting back to your original question, I know I should have been more direct with my multiple no's in this case. I think I was just trying to minimize the situation because of what I had already discussed with him. If that makes sense.